My name is Lucas Hale. I'm 32 years old, and I live alone in a house that's too big for one person, on a stretch of Oregon coastline where the nearest grocery store is 11 miles north, and the nearest person who actually knows my name is probably a fisherman named Ed who waves at me from his truck twice a week without stopping. I didn't plan to end up here. 3 years ago, I was working as a structural engineer for a firm in Portland, engaged to a woman named Claire, with a 5-year plan that felt solid enough to stand on. Then my mother had her first stroke in February and her second in April. And by June, I was driving to Tillamook every weekend to check on the house she could no longer manage. When she died in October, she left me the house, the debt on it, and a kind of silence that fills a place after someone stops living in it. I stayed. I don't fully know why. Part of it was the house needing work. Part of it was Claire deciding, gently and correctly, that the man she had agreed to marry had become someone she didn't recognize anymore. She wasn't wrong. I had stopped recognizing him too. So I stayed. I took on remote consulting work, enough to cover the mortgage and the repairs. I fixed the roof, replaced the windows, rebuilt the back deck. I learned how to do most of it from YouTube videos and library books and trial and error that cost me 2 cracked ribs when a ladder shifted on wet planking. I kept to myself. I got used to the sound of the ocean at night, which at first felt like loneliness, and eventually started to feel like company. That's the version of my life I'd accepted. Quiet, functional, going nowhere in particular. And then one Thursday in March at 2014 in the morning, someone knocked on my door. Not the aggressive kind of knock that makes you reach for a phone. It was slow. 4 knocks, then nothing, then 3 more. Like whoever was doing it wasn't entirely sure this was a good idea. I lay in bed for a moment listening to the rain against the windows. Then I got up, pulled on a sweatshirt, and went downstairs. I turned on the porch light before I opened the door. She was standing at the edge of the porch, not directly at the door, like she was leaving herself room to back away. Mid-20s maybe. Dark coat soaked through, hair matted against her face, a duffel bag hanging from one shoulder so heavy it pulled her sideways. She was shivering in small, controlled tremors, the kind you do when you're trying not to show it. There was something wrong with her left hand. She was holding it against her stomach, and the wrist had the swollen, careful look of something that had been grabbed and twisted. "I'm sorry," she said. Her voice was steady, which surprised me. "My car ran off the embankment about 2 miles south. I walked. I saw your light." I looked past her toward the road. In the rain and dark, I couldn't see anything, but I knew that stretch. The shoulder dropped sharply there into scrub and rock. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine." She was not fine. I could see that. "Do you want to come inside?" She didn't answer immediately. She looked at me the way a person looks at a door they're not sure is an exit or a trap. I stepped back from the frame so she could see more of the room behind me, the kitchen light, the ordinary mess of it, the coffee mug I'd left on the counter. "I'm not going to hurt you," I said. "You're soaking wet, and it's 40 degrees. Come in." She came in. Her name was June Callahan. I learned that after I handed her a dish towel because it was closer than a real towel, pointed her toward the bathroom down the hall, and put the kettle on. She came back in dry socks that were still somehow muddy, wearing the same wet jeans because I hadn't thought to offer anything else, holding the dish towel like she didn't know what she was supposed to do with it now. I set a mug of tea on the table and pulled out a chair without making it feel like a command. She sat, both hands around the mug. She didn't drink right away, just held it. "The car," I said. "Is there anyone in it?" "No, just me." "Do you want me to call someone?" "No." I nodded and sat down on the other side of the table. I didn't push. Outside, the rain was coming in sideways off the water, the kind that finds every gap in every window frame. "The cell service out here is bad," I said. "There's a landline if you need it." "I know about the cell service." She said it without thinking, and then caught herself just slightly. A small hesitation that told me she had been in this area before, that she knew this stretch of coast. I didn't say anything about it. After a few minutes, she drank some of the tea. After a few more, she said, "I don't want to take up your couch. I'll figure something out in the morning." "It's 2 in the morning and there's nowhere to go until it gets light," I said. "The couch is fine. It's where I sleep half the time anyway." That wasn't true, but it seemed to help. Something in her shoulders dropped a fraction. She slept on the couch. I left a spare blanket on the armrest and went back upstairs. I didn't sleep for a long time. I lay there listening to the rain and trying to place the thing I felt, which wasn't quite worry and wasn't quite curiosity, but was some version of both. The wrist. The way she had looked at me before coming inside. The fact that she knew about the cell service. I was still thinking about it when I finally fell asleep. In the morning, she was in the kitchen. She had found the coffee and made a full pot, which was more than I usually bothered with. She was standing at the window with a mug, looking out at the water. In the gray morning light with her hair dry, she looked younger than she had at the door and more tired in a different way, the tired that sleep doesn't fix. She heard me on the stairs and turned. I used your coffee. I'll replace it. Don't worry about it. I poured a cup and stood beside her. The storm had passed during the night. The ocean was still rough, white caps running in long diagonal lines toward the shore, but the rain had stopped. I can drive you to get your car looked at, I said. There's a tow service in Wheeler that opens at 8. I'd appreciate that. We drove down the coast road in silence. I found the car about 1.5 miles south, not 2, just off the shoulder where the road curved. It had clipped the guardrail and nosed down into the rocky scrub. Not violently, but enough that the front passenger wheel was at an angle that meant it wasn't driving anywhere without a flatbed. The windshield on the driver's side had a crack running from the bottom corner. June stood looking at it with her arms crossed. The expression on her face was not the expression of someone calculating a repair bill. It was the expression of someone watching a plan fall apart. Is there anything in it you need? I asked. I already have everything. She touched the strap of the duffel bag. I called Ed Wheeler's son who ran the tow service and we waited by the road. While we waited, I didn't ask questions. I had learned in the last few hours that June Callahan was someone who answered exactly what was asked and nothing more, and that anything I wanted to understand, I was going to have to wait for. The tow truck came. The car went. June stood watching it get loaded with that same expression, arms crossed, wind pulling at her hair. On the drive back, she said, I don't suppose there's a motel. 40 minutes north. She looked out the window. I can't drive you today, I said. I have a call at 10, I can't move. But this afternoon, I paused. Or you can stay until tomorrow. There's a room upstairs. It locks from the inside. I said that last part because it seemed like the right thing to say, and because I had noticed again in the daylight how careful she was about exits, how she had sat in the car with her back to the door, how she had positioned herself at the kitchen window so she could see both the road and the room at the same time. She was quiet for long enough that I thought she was going to say no. Then, okay, one night. That one night became 3 before either of us acknowledged it. It wasn't dramatic. It was small things. The first afternoon, while I was on my call, she cleaned the kitchen without asking, not in an eager-to-please way, but in the methodical, quiet way of someone who needs their hands to be doing something. When I came downstairs, she was reorganizing the cabinet under the sink, which had been a chaos of cleaning supplies since my mother's time. I hope that's okay, she said. Yeah, it's fine. The second day, she walked down to the beach in the morning and came back with a jacket full of weathered sea glass she'd been collecting, holding it in the front of her jacket because she didn't have anything else to carry it in. She arranged it in a row on the windowsill. I watched her do it and didn't say anything because it seemed like the kind of thing that shouldn't require comment. That afternoon, a piece of the back deck railing finally gave out, something I'd been meaning to fix for 2 months. I was out there looking at it when June came and stood beside me, hands in her jacket pockets. You need a sister board there, she said. I know. You've got rot in the post. It's not just the railing. I looked at her. My grandfather built houses, she said simply. I got the materials from the shed and we worked on it together for 2 hours. She knew what she was doing. She didn't over-explain it, and she didn't make it a performance. She just worked, and it was done right when we finished. We ate dinner that night at the kitchen table. Pasta, which was the easiest thing I could make without thinking about it. June ate like someone who had been not eating for a while. Carefully, like she was rationing the experience. You don't have to tell me anything, I said. But I want you to know I'm not going to ask you to leave. She looked up from her plate. Why not? It was the same question anyone would have asked. I thought about it. Because you fixed my deck, I said. She almost smiled. Not quite. On the fourth day, I came downstairs and found her on the phone. She was standing by the back door, and when she heard me, she didn't end the call, but she held up one hand in the small, apologetic gesture that meant she knew I'd heard and turned to face the window. "I told you I wasn't there," she said, quietly but very clearly. "I don't have anything to say to him. Don't call this number again." She ended the call and stood still for a moment with her hand flat on the kitchen counter. "I'm sorry," she said when she turned around. "I used the landline. I'll pay for it." June. "I'm fine." "You said that in the rain, too." She looked at me for a moment. Then she set the phone down and sat at the table and put both hands flat in front of her, and I could see them trembling very slightly before she pressed them down to stop it. I sat across from her. I didn't reach for her hands. I didn't say anything. After a long moment, she said, "His name is Douglas Hale. He owns a property management company in Bend. I worked for him for 14 months. I waited. At first, it was just a job. The company managed vacation rentals along the coast, and I handled the books and the vendor contracts. He was charming, generous even. He flew the whole team to Seattle for a conference. He took me to dinner twice. I thought it was because I was good at my job." She stopped. "The third time he took me to dinner, he told me he'd found some errors in my work. He showed me documents. I'd never seen them before, but they had my name on them." She looked at her hands. "That was when I understood what kind of person he was. After that," she said, "it was a slow thing. The kind that happens so gradually you don't recognize it until you're already in it. She was responsible for mistakes she hadn't made. She owed him, in some framework he had built entirely on his own, for the dinner, for the conference, for the salary increase she hadn't known to question. He held her invoicing access, which meant he held her paycheck. He said he was keeping it in escrow to cover the damages. There was no escrow. There were no damages. There was only him deciding what she owed and when. When she tried to leave in January, he had her laptop. He had files she needed to get her next job, references she couldn't replace, and a set of emails he said he would send to her former employers proving she had embezzled from the company. The emails were fabricated. She knew that, but she also knew how long it takes to prove something like that and what it costs. The night she left, he had come to her apartment. Not violently, not loudly. He was always composed. He had simply stood in the hallway and told her that if she was serious about this, she should understand what she was walking away from. When she moved past him to go to the car, he put his hand on her wrist. Just held it. Long enough that it swelled. She drove 3 hours before she pulled over. She drove 2 more before the rain got bad. She didn't have a plan. She had the duffel bag in the road and the light on in my window. When she finished, the kitchen was so quiet I could hear the tide. "He's going to come here," she said. "I used your landline and he's probably traced the area code. I should go before he does." "Or you could stay," I said, "and we deal with it." "That's not your problem. You've been in my house for 4 days. I looked at her. "That makes it my problem." She looked back at me, and I could see her running the math on it. All the ways this could go wrong for me. All the reasons I should want her to leave. "Why?" she said. I thought about the sea glass on the windowsill, the deck she'd repaired without being asked, the way she made a full pot of coffee because she'd noticed I was the kind of person who would drink it. "I'm not sure yet," I said honestly. "But I'm not asking you to go." He came on a Saturday. I was in the shed replacing the motor on a sump pump when I heard a car on the gravel. A gray sedan, expensive, Oregon plates. The man who got out was around 50, fit in the careful way of someone who pays for it, wearing a jacket that cost more than my truck payment. He looked at the house with the expression of someone doing an appraisal. There was someone else in the car who didn't get out. "I'm looking for a woman named June Callahan," he said when he saw me. "I believe she's been staying here." "Who are you?" "Douglas Hale. She's a former employee. She left under difficult circumstances and I'd like to resolve it." I set down the motor I was carrying. "She's not available." Douglas looked at me with the patient expression of someone who has waited out other men before. "I understand she may have told you a version of events that makes me sound like the villain. She's done this before. She has a tendency to," he paused, selecting the word carefully, "ingratiate herself with people who are in a position to help her, It passes. Okay, I said. He blinked, not expecting that response. I'd like to speak with her. She doesn't want to speak with you. That's not really for you to decide. She told me that directly, I said. So it kind of is. His expression didn't change, but something behind it did. He was used to people who weighed the cost of opposing him and found it too high. I had run those numbers already. She has property belonging to me, he said. If she doesn't return it, I'll involve the sheriff's department. Then involve them, I said. I'll be here. There was a long pause. The man in the car still hadn't moved. You don't know what you're getting into, Douglas said pleasantly. Probably not, I said. Drive safe. He stood there for another moment, making sure I understood this wasn't resolved. Then he got in the car, and they left. I went inside. June was standing in the kitchen, arms wrapped around herself, looking at the window. You heard, I said. Yes. The property he's talking about. Is there anything? He has my hard drive. Whatever property he means, he already has it. Okay. I sat down at the table. I'm going to call a lawyer tomorrow. I know someone in Astoria who handles employment law. We're going to write down everything you told me. Every date, every amount, every conversation you remember. June looked at me for a long time. Her eyes were very still. You don't have to do this. You keep saying that like it's going to change my answer. Something shifted in her face. Not quite tears. Something before tears. I don't know how to let people help me, she said. I haven't had to for a long time. I know, I said. But you fixed my deck. Consider it a trade. That night she told me the rest of it. The part she'd left out the first time. There was a woman named Rachel, another former employee of Douglas's, who had a nearly identical story. June had been in contact with her. They had talked about going to the Oregon Bureau of Labor and Industries together, but June hadn't had documentation, and Douglas's attorneys had sent Rachel a letter that scared her into silence. If I had a record of his communications, June said, even the voicemails. But my phone, he had access to my account. He factory reset it remotely the night I left. Everything's gone. I thought about this. He called the landline here, I said. This morning, after you called him. She looked up. I record all incoming calls, I said. My mother used to get scam calls constantly. I set it up for her and never changed it. I pushed back my chair. Let me find the box. The recording was 11 minutes long. Douglas Hale's voice, calm and methodical, outlining exactly what June had taken, what she owed him, what he intended to do if she didn't return. He used specific dollar amounts. He mentioned the fabricated emails directly, matter-of-factly, as if the fact that they weren't real was irrelevant. He talked about the hard drive, about the references he would poison, about the industry contacts he would call. When the recording ended, June sat completely still. That's enough, I said. That's everything, she said. My lawyer's name was Patricia Chen, and she was not the kind of person who expressed surprise often, but she came close when I played her the recording over the phone. She called Rachel's attorney the following morning. By the end of the week, a joint complaint had been filed with the bully, and a civil case was underway in Deschutes County. Douglas's attorneys sent a letter. Patricia sent a better one back. The hearing was 6 weeks later in Bend. June drove herself. I drove separately because she asked me to, and I understood why. She needed to walk in on her own. I sat 3 rows behind her. When June testified, she was precise. She had dates, she had the recording, she had a spreadsheet of withheld wages she had reconstructed from memory and bank records going back 14 months. She didn't perform emotion, she was simply accurate, which in that room was more devastating than anything else she could have done. Rachel testified after her. Same story, different year. Douglas's attorney made arguments about contractual obligations and disputed facts. The hearing officer asked Douglas directly whether the emails he referenced in the phone call were authentic. There was a pause that lasted too long. The ruling came 3 weeks later. Wage theft, coercive employment practices, a civil finding of harassment. Douglas Hale was ordered to pay June 14 months of withheld wages, plus penalties, plus legal fees. I was in the shed when June called to tell me. It's done, she said. What are you feeling? A pause. Weird, she said. Light. Like I'm not sure what to do with my hands. Come home, I said, and then caught myself because I hadn't meant to say it that way. I mean. Come back. I made too much soup. There was a silence, and then she laughed. An actual laugh, full and sudden. And it was the first time I'd heard it, and it was a good sound. She came back. After that, things changed the way things change when people stop waiting for the other shoe. Slowly, then all at once, June got her documents back. She opened a new account at a credit union in Tillamook. She started taking on freelance bookkeeping clients she found through a small business network in Astoria, working from my kitchen table on a laptop she bought herself, secondhand, but solid. She talked about finding an apartment. I didn't say anything when she said it, but I knew she was watching to see if I would. I didn't, because it was her choice and because I wasn't sure yet what I wanted to say. One evening in April, we were sitting on the back deck I'd rebuilt, the one she'd helped me fix, watching the sun go down behind the cape. The ocean was flat for once, just long, gentle rollers coming in off the Pacific, catching the last light. I've been thinking about staying in the area, June said. Not here, but close. I looked at her. Close is good, I said. She turned the sea glass over in her hand. She'd brought a piece out with her, a piece of pale green she'd found her first morning on the beach, smooth at every edge. I don't want to crowd you, she said. June. She looked up. You reorganized my cabinet under the sink, I said. You fixed my railing. You made a full pot of coffee every morning for 6 weeks. You haven't crowded me once. She looked back at the water. I'm not good at staying somewhere, she said quietly. I've moved 7 times in 5 years. I've always told myself it was circumstances, but I think some of it was me, not trusting that I was allowed to stay. You're allowed, I said. You can't just tell someone that. I know, I said. I'm not just telling you. I'm telling you because I mean it. The sun touched the edge of the cape and the water turned gold for about 90 seconds the way it does on the Oregon coast in spring when the clouds part at exactly the right moment, which is rare enough that when it happens, you notice it. When you showed up at my door, I said, I was living like someone waiting out a sentence, not miserable, just empty. Like I'd decided this was what my life was and I'd stopped asking whether it could be different. I paused. You put sea glass on my windowsill. You fixed my deck. You laughed in my kitchen. You made the house feel like somewhere a person actually lives. I looked at her. I don't want to go back to before. June was quiet for a long time. The gold faded from the water and the light went soft and gray. I'm scared, she said. I know. Not of you, she said quickly. Of wanting something and losing it. I'm not scared of you. I know that too. She set the sea glass down on the railing, picked it up again. Okay, she said finally. Okay, what? Okay, I'll stay. She looked at me. Close. I'll stay close. I nodded. Something in my chest that had been held carefully for a long time let go all at once, quietly, the way a tide goes out. Close is enough, I said. By summer, close had become the same porch, the same kitchen, her name on the utility account because she insisted on paying her share, which I stopped arguing about because she was right. A second shelf in the bathroom, a coat hook by the door that appeared one morning without discussion. She took on 3 full-time bookkeeping clients and subcontracted overflow work to Rachel, who had moved to the coast the previous year. They built something together, the two of them, a small firm that was also, in a way that neither of them said out loud, the thing they had been trying to rebuild individually for years. I kept the consulting work. I fixed the rest of what the house needed. I stopped doing only what was necessary and started doing what I wanted, which turned out to include a garden on the south side of the house, a kayak I'd been thinking about for 2 years, and Friday dinners where we invited people over, which was not something I'd done since Portland, and which turned out to be a thing I'd missed without knowing I'd missed it. One afternoon in late August, Jude called me from the feed store in Tillamook where she'd gone for potting soil. They have a dog here, she said. Okay. Someone surrendered him this morning. He's a retriever. He's very sad looking. I could hear the dog in the background. He sounded resigned. June. I'm just telling you. You're definitely not just telling me. A pause. He has one white ear. I was quiet for a moment. What's his name? He doesn't have one yet. I looked at the kitchen, the sea glass on the windowsill, the second coffee mug in the drying rack, the coat hook by the door. "Bring him home," I said. She did. That evening the three of us sat on the back deck. The dog, who June named Harbor, lay across both our feet, enormous and immediately comfortable. The ocean moved in the dark below us, the familiar sound of it. The sound I had learned to live with when I thought living with it was the best I could do. "I used to sit out here alone every night," I said. "After my mother. After Claire. I thought I'd just gotten used to being by myself. But I think I was just waiting." "For what?" June asked. I thought about the knock on the door at 2014 in the morning. The woman standing at the edge of the porch, soaking wet, leaving herself room to run. "I don't know," I said. "For someone to knock." June leaned her head against my shoulder. Harbor sighed under our feet. The ocean kept moving the way it always had, indifferent and enormous and somehow, in that moment, exactly right. I think about the night June knocked on my door a lot. Not the dramatic version of it, not the rain or the dark or the swollen wrist. I think about the smaller thing, which is that she stood at the edge of the porch instead of directly at the door. She left herself room to run. That detail has stayed with me because I understand it now in a way I didn't then. When someone has been controlled long enough, they stop trusting that any open door is actually open. They position themselves for the exit before they even try the entrance. What Douglas Hale did to June wasn't a single act. It was a system. He built it carefully, over 14 months, using charm first and then leverage, replacing her trust in her own judgment with dependence on his. That's how that kind of damage works. Not all at once, but incrementally, until the person inside it can't see the edges of it anymore. June was smart. She was more than smart. But intelligence alone doesn't protect you from someone who is patient and deliberate, and has resources you don't. What eventually protected her was something different. She kept enough of herself intact to know on the night he cornered her that she had to run. She grabbed what she could and she left. That took a kind of courage that doesn't get talked about enough. Not the brave kind that looks good from the outside, but the desperate, unglamorous kind that happens at 2 a.m. with a duffel bag and nowhere specific to go. I didn't save her. I want to be clear about that because the story could be told that way and it would be wrong. What I did was open a gate. What June did was everything else. She rebuilt her records from memory. She contacted Rachel. She testified without performing. Just precise, documented, unshakable. The system ruled in her favor not because someone rescued her, but because she had, against significant pressure, held on to the truth long enough to bring it into a room where it could matter. What I've come to understand, living with the aftermath of all of it, is that the people who come through something like that intact are the ones who never fully surrendered their own sense of what was real. June always knew the emails were fabricated. She always knew what she was actually owed. She couldn't prove it yet, but she knew. That's not a small thing. Holding on to what you know to be true, when someone with power is insisting otherwise, requires a kind of moral clarity that most people underestimate until they're tested on it. And then there's the patience of it. The slow work. The spreadsheet rebuilt from memory. The 6 weeks between the complaint and the hearing. The 3 weeks waiting for the ruling. None of that is exciting. All of it is necessary. The things that actually repair a life are rarely dramatic. They're just consistent and honest and done one day at a time. I still have the sea glass on the windowsill. June put it there her first morning, before she knew if she was staying or going, before any of it was resolved. I think about that too. Even then, before she had any reason to believe this was a place she'd be allowed to remain, she was already making it a little more like somewhere worth staying. That tells me more about who she is than anything else that happened. Harbor is asleep on the deck right now. The ocean is doing what it does. The house doesn't feel like something I'm waiting out anymore. I don't take that lightly.